water has been found to be flowing on Mars. The enigmatic dark streaks on Mars, called recurring slope lineae, or RSL, that appears seasonally on steep, relatively warm Martian slopes, are likely caused by salty liquid water, researchers say. Now, this would point to there being subterranean aquifers, possibly. Who knows? So, liquid water is a key requirement for life on Earth, says lead author, I'm going to butcher this, I apologize, sir, Luhendra, perhaps, Oha, who's from the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. Hey, represent Georgia. I'm wearing a Georgia shirt right now, by the way. Good victory for the Bulldogs the other day. They told Space.com, the presence of liquid water on Mars' present-day surface therefore points to environments that are more habitable than previously thought. Now, that doesn't prove that there's life on Mars, but it suggests that it is possible. Also, we could potentially desalinate, take the salt out of the water that's on Mars and then turn that into a water source for any sort of colony on Mars. So life on Mars is possible. That's confirmed. And if you just checked our Twitter, on Hot News Talk Radio's Twitter, you will see that life on Mars is possible. So does that mean now that there is life on Mars? Well, maybe, possibly. You know, there could be some microorganisms living on Mars. I would not doubt that. I would not be surprised at all to discover there's some sort of microorganism. More likely, though, there was something like that living on Mars quite a long time ago, because if you look at some different studies, it does suggest that Mars had an atmosphere at one point, or there's more of an atmosphere at one point, possibly with oxygen and lower temperature and all sorts of different things. So it's interesting. Anyway, it's an interesting topic because we don't really know. There's a lot about space that we just don't know. It's actually funny when you look at it how much is just theoretical. Lots of stuff about space is theoretical. There are theories. Like, there's not scientific law about a whole lot of things when we're looking at space. We have laws of physics, which can be easily replicated. We know that these things work this way pretty consistently. So it's scientific law. It's fact. But when we're looking at something like the possibility of life on Mars, it's all theoretical. Not to say it's impossible, but it's all theoretical. So we don't have any way of proving that there is, in fact, life on Mars. So this particular researcher, Oha, I believe is how you say the person's name, was part of the team that first discovered RSL in 2011 by studying images captured by the High Resolution Imaging Science Experiment, or HiRISE, which is a camera aboard NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or the MRO. So these different trenches occur in many different locations on Mars, from equatorial regions up to the planet's middle latitudes. These streaks are just 1.6 feet to 16 feet, or 0.5 to 5 meters wide for our Canadian friends, but they can extend for hundreds of meters downslope. RSL appear during warm weather, but fade away when temperatures drop, leading many researchers to speculate that liquid water is involved in their formation. Online today, in the journal Nature, it strongly supports that hypothesis, team members said. Now, again, this is not proven. Hypothesis and theory are what we're looking at here. So it's the language you're going to see a lot is strong evidence. That's what NASA says. You see things like there's theory, there's words today. There's theoretical situations where water could exist on Mars. We can hypothesize that water exists on Mars, but until we send a rover over there and scoop it up and say definitively this is water which is on Mars, we don't know that there's water on Mars. We can theorize all day, but until there's concrete evidence of it being there, we can't really say that there's water on Mars yet. Because again, when we're talking about science, you can't definitively say it. Now, there's a strong possibility, yes, but we can't prove it yet. Now, I'm not trying to be a discouraging, in a discouraging mood, obviously. I mean, I want there to be water on Mars, but let's not jump to conclusions yet. Because again, the evidence suggests it. Yeah, that's true. But we got to be careful when we're making assumptions or when we make definitive statements about Mars or anything else, really. The evidence does suggest that there is water on Mars. Yes, that is definitively true. But the definitive proof of there being water on Mars is not quite there yet. So we got to get some rovers over there, scoop up some water, and then do a test on it. That test has to run back to NASA. They can say, "Oh, that's water. That's 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. There we go." And then H2O, and there it is. So that will be what will determine if there is in fact water on Mars. So we don't know for sure yet, but we're getting there. But nevertheless, this is not to be discouraging. This is a very big discovery that we have here. The potentiality for life on Mars has just risen quite significantly. I'm actually, this has put me in the mood to watch that Martian movie, that Matt Damon film, which I'm probably going to go watch that eventually sometime. Maybe when it comes out on DVD or something, I'll go see that movie too. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to space stuff. I really like the idea of space colonies, even if there's no reason whatsoever to have a space colony, right? Like the International Space Station, we accomplished a lot scientifically with that, but like there's arguments that, well, practically there's no reason to have it, all these different things. And it's hard to argue with people like that, people who are like that, because they don't understand or don't care to understand how important it is that we understand how microgravity affects different things. And it's really difficult. It really is just difficult to explain how important it is that we do these different studies in space. But anyway, as it is now, space is sort of the not new thing, but it's sort of what a lot of people my age are looking into even more. I think we're seeing sort of a renaissance of people being interested in space travel. We're seeing a lot of movies now coming out about space travel that are, I don't want to say highly scientific, but they're a little bit more based in science than, say, like Star Wars or Star Trek, even though Star Trek does have reasonably okay basis in science sometimes. It's science fiction. So what are you going to do? But we're seeing movies like Interstellar, this new Martian movie coming out, Gravity, although Gravity's not highly based in science, but still, we're seeing a lot of movies coming out that are about space, and that's cool. I say that's cool because I want there to be more research done into space. We're also seeing new startups, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic. There's now the possibility of flying into space on a commercial flight. How cool is that? And it's so neat because I want that to happen, and what I want to happen is happening, and that's so exciting to me because that doesn't happen very often. When we're talking about technology, very often when I want something to happen, it doesn't, and I get really disappointed. But now we're seeing things in space that I hoped were there, and it turns out might actually be there. So, hey, cool, right? So can we then colonize Mars? That's a question that should be asked. Is that possible? Well, if in fact there is liquid water on Mars, yeah. If there's water that we can access and there's a ready supply of it, we could totally colonize Mars. We could set up growing rooms, and we could set up the hydroponics bays like in Star Trek Voyager, all sorts of different things we could do. And we could actually have a colony on Mars. How neat would that be? I'm not sure what the gravity is like on Mars. I think it's a little bit less than Earth. So there would have to be different exercises that people would have to do on Mars to ensure that they don't, die, osteodegeneration happens, and all sorts of bad things can happen to you if you exist in a lower gravity than Earth, because, believe it or not, we are very finely tuned to exist on Earth. We're kind of meant to. So traveling to another planet and existing in an environment that's even slightly different from Earth's can be hazardous to your health. So don't get your hopes up yet, but have a little bit of optimism. In my generation, in my lifetime, we could, in fact, see colonies on Mars. I mean, 2019 or 2020, anyway, is the date that NASA has set for some space exploration over to Mars. We haven't seen any moon landings in the last, 30, 40 years. That's kind of disappointing, but hey, why not? I'm surprised actually we didn't see a moon operation in the 80s. I would expect of any decade, the 80s would be the decade where there would be some sort of attempted moon landing, if for no other reason than to just stick it to the Soviets, because it seemed like the 80s was the decade of sticking it to the Soviets. But oh well, because we got out of Vietnam and then they got into Afghanistan and we sort of made fun of them for that. And it's just the 80s seemed like it was the decade of sticking it to the Soviets, and yet we didn't do a whole lot in terms of space travel in the 80s. Neither did the Soviets, really, oddly enough. So I don't know. Hopefully we're getting back into the swing of things. Now, The funny thing is, space travel is becoming a lot more affordable too. And I don't want to dwell on this too much, but space travel is becoming a lot more affordable now because we're seeing people like Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson are both very rich individuals, but they're also driven by personal interest. And I like that because you have sort of eccentric billionaires driven by interest. And that's really something that could only happen in a capitalist society, which we have here in the States and, in Canada and several other countries too. Mexico is a very capitalist country, just not officially sometimes. So we're seeing that a lot. And it's very fascinating to see what these eccentric billionaires can do. Elon Musk starts up Tesla, which is actually, I've read anyway, a bigger company than Mitsubishi in car manufacturing. How nuts is that? So we're seeing all sorts of just eccentric billionaires doing eccentric billionaire things and becoming successful at it. So taking a risk is something that has to happen, especially when we're talking about space. Think about all the different shuttles that went off and all the different little things that can go wrong. A tiny malfunction and you can die. And there are people willing to take that risk. There are agencies willing to take that risk. And there are contractors willing to potentially, probably not, take responsibility for anything going wrong with that risk. Looking at you, Boeing. So we're seeing all sorts of very fascinating things happen in the venture capital and in the eccentric billionaire circle, as I like to call it. So lots of neat stuff is happening. I'm very excited about the future of technology and the future of space, the future of our involvement in space. I'm very excited. So I'll get off of that tangent and we'll get back into other things, I guess. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. Hey, if you want to get a pizza, head over to Raphael's Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant. It's over in Hickson in Highland Plaza. Saudi Daisy Church of God is where it's near. And it's open every day. You can get buy one, get one free pizza. So Raphael's Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant, buy one, get one free. Look up your nearest location of Raphael's Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant, and you can grab yourself a pizza and you can buy one, get one free. You really can't beat that, especially since it's coming around lunchtime. So very exciting stuff coming out with space. I can't wait because my generation has the unique, well, maybe not unique, but the once every cycle or so opportunity of seeing real travel in space. Now, it's not going to be like Space Cowboys, Cowboy Bebop sort of thing where anyone can travel up in space within the next 10 years. Probably not going to be seeing that because it's still hugely expensive to get a payload up into space. It costs like $100,000 per pound for a payload to get up in space. So still prohibitively expensive for the average guy, the average Joe. But we're still, cost is going down. Just like any technology, it gets scaled down and costs less. So very, very exciting stuff. Hey, speaking of exciting news, Google has turned 17. So Google is older than my sister. How weird is that, right? Google is older than some of our kids. Wow. Yeah, so Google is a surprisingly old company, actually. It was founded back in 1998 by just a bunch of college kids, and you really can't beat that. Most of the good companies are founded by just a bunch of college kids or college dropouts, and you can't beat that, man. So Google was founded back in 1998, and it quickly became the premier search engine. Remember Ask Jeeves, which is now just ask.com, which no one goes to? Remember Yahoo Search, which no one uses despite being the default on Firefox? Everyone just switches back over to Google. Google is the search engine, and it's the search engine for a reason. It's the search engine because it's the most user-friendly. It's also free. It also tends to work the best, especially compared to Bing, because Bing it's Microsoft. It's clunky. It's Microsoft. It's not cool. That's the thing. Microsoft used to be at least sort of cool, but now it's really not. It's gotten so corporate. It's always been corporate. I mean, their first deal was with IBM, so it's just corporate. Google has always sort of been, I don't want to say the antithesis of that, because Google is very corporate. It just has a air of non-corporate attitude, I guess, and that might be the downfall of Google. So let's do a little bit of a recap of what's been happening with Google in the last few years or so. Okay, so 1998 is when Google launched. 17 years ago. I can't believe it's that old. 17 years ago, Google launched, and it's actually not much younger than me, which is even weirder. I was born in 95, and then this came out not too long after I did. In fact, fun fact, I am younger than Amazon.com. Yes, it's true. Amazon.com was founded in 1994. I was founded in 1995. So Amazon.com is actually a little bit older than I am. How weird is that? I truly grew up in the tech age. Anyway, about Google. So Google is looking, well, Google could essentially do nothing and still make money right about now because Google makes royalties off of Android. Google also is an ad company. And so it's half the stuff on Google AdSense is automated anyway. So really you could just, the guys at Google could take like a month off and they could still make money. How weird is that? And Google has been doing some, well, weird things in the last few years. Now, one thing Google has always done is being culturally relevant, we'll put it that way. Google was an early tech adopter of the LGBTQ society group movement, whatever. Google's now jumping on the bandwagon of being all about the social justice warriors and the new like fourth or fifth wave feminist thing. It's really not acting in their favor because a lot of resources are being used on different social movements that are really not in Google's favor. I mean, what does that have to do with search engines, really? Google's also been getting in a bit of trouble in the European Union with the right to be forgotten nonsense. And Google has been getting in not a whole lot of trouble in the US, actually, because no one wants to mess with Google. So Google's been doing some odd things anyway. Now, on the plus side, Android has been getting better and better to the point where I think, anyway, it's on par with iOS. I've always thought that it was better, but that's my personal opinion. But strictly from a tech standpoint, I think Android is definitely on par with iOS, especially now. Now, you might say, well, I used Android and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. Well, how long ago was that? Because we're talking like the last few months or so where it's gotten a lot better. So, yeah, it's really improved. Android 5.11 is decent, I gotta say. Now, I'm using a Motorola Moto G. You might have a different experience if you're using a different phone, especially if you're using, say, like a Samsung, which has sort of that weird overlay thing, especially if you're using like a Lenovo. Heaven help you if you're using a Lenovo. I used one for 2 or so years, and it was really... I thought it was really good, but then I switched to a different phone. I realized how bad it was. So I don't know. No, but Android has gotten a lot better. Multitasking actually works, especially if you're using a Nexus. If you're running a Nexus 6, you basically got it cinched. You can't really get a better Android phone than that. So Android's changed a lot. I'm optimistic about the future of Google. Caller, you're on the air. What's going on?
Android sucks.
Oh, come on. No, it doesn't.
It does. It's terrible.
When was the last time you used it?
And I've had Android phones my entire life.
Entire life? How old are you?
5, 6, 7 years. I'm 9 years old. It's terrible. It freezes. It locks up. These programs don't talk to each other. Apple blows them away. And I hate to tell you that, but you know what I'm going to have to do is reactivate one of my Android phones. But listen, if you're tired of Android freezing up, and you're tired of the download this and download that, you've got a virus and clean your phone and all that other baloney, just get an Apple phone.
Okay, well, I mean, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. That's the thing, too, is that if it gets the job done and it works, hey, I can't argue with that. If you have an iPhone and you like it and it gets the job done, fine. That's cool. That's totally nice. I'm happy for you. I just personally like Android. I think it is better than iOS from my personal experience, because that's the thing is we're using so many web-based apps that it really doesn't matter that much anymore anyway. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell, here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brandon Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week is former Congresswoman and candidate for the presidency, Miss Michelle Bachmann, who'll be here to talk about just how big a role beliefs play in forging public policy. Don't miss the always controversial Michelle Bachmann this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pam Puso.
The United States cannot solve the world's problems alone.
At the UN General Assembly, President Obama says he'll work with any nation to solve the crisis in Syria. That topic on the agenda as the president prepares to sit down with Russia's leader. Remorse won't keep Joyce Mitchell out of prison.
I can't begin to explain how sorry I am for all this.
The former New York prison worker who helped 2 inmates escape will serve up to 7 years behind bars.
This is by far the worst mistake I have ever made in my life.
Mitchell provided tools to the inmates. Donald Trump wants to overhaul the tax code.
If you're single and earn less than $25,000 or married and jointly earn less than $50,000, you'll not pay any income tax. Nothing.
Trump speaking in New York. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hey, we'll pay any income tax, nothing. You know, despite the fact that I don't have the power to implement that, we'll just ignore that, right? We'll just ignore that Congress will probably vote that one down in favor of some totally socialist tax the rich plan. Whatever. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. People put way too much faith in presidents these days. Well, actually, probably they always have. But people put way too much faith in presidents. Probably always have. The thing about presidents is they don't have a whole lot of power, nor should they. Presidents, I don't want a strong leader, man. That's the thing. Is people keep saying, oh, we need a strong leader to fix it. I don't want a strong leader. Because we had a strong leader, guess what? That's power in one person's hands that is really going to go either unchecked or is going to go totally haywire. Because somebody with all that power is going to get corrupt at some point. That's just inevitable. If you're corrupt enough to get into the presidential office in the first place, I can guarantee you don't want power in that person's hands. I guarantee you. Because to get to be president, you got to do some evil stuff, man. To get to be president, to get to that high level politically, think about how corrupt you have to be mayor these days. Now think about that on a presidential scale. I don't want that guy to have all that power. Now, yeah, there are exceptions. You could use Reagan as one. But when it comes right down to it, to be president, you got to make some bad deals. Some really evil, wicked stuff has to happen for you to be president. I don't trust it. I don't want one guy to be president with that much power. That's just too much. And so that's good because there isn't that much power for the president. Most of it lies with Congress and the states. So say, Trump and all these others, Jeb Bush included, Clinton probably makes some, Bernie Sanders makes a whole heck of a lot of different promises. They can't make good on them. That's the thing. They never could. They know they can anyway. They're just lying through their teeth, or they're being at least intentionally deceptive. We'll put it in a kind way. They're being intentionally deceptive because they can't possibly believe that they have or will have the power to do the things which they promise to do once they become president, right? Like Trump can't build the wall. He can make promises, but he can't build the wall because funding has to happen. The money doesn't exist anyway. He'd have to pull it out of thin air. To force the Mexican government to do that would be illegal anyway for the president to do because the president can't make deals with other countries in that way without congressional approval. Congressional approval is not going to happen. The wall's not going to get built, guys. Even if Trump gets elected president, the wall's not going to get built. Trust me on that one. It can't happen. Well, I shouldn't say it can't happen. It most likely won't happen because flukes do happen. Same goes with his tax plan. I would say the same thing if Ron Paul promised this tax plan. It can't happen. He doesn't have the power. It just doesn't exist. And that's good, actually, because we got to the place where we are because of trends, because of things continuing along a path. We didn't get there because one guy made one decision. It doesn't work that way. It's many, many bad decisions over the course of 200-something years that got us to the point where we are now. And one guy can't fix it. A whole committee of people, a whole Soviet cannot fix it because it doesn't work that way. You would take another 200 years of really good decisions to fix the hole that we're in. And guess what? That's probably not going to happen. Too many people are getting paid too much money for that to happen. So there is no unified solution to the hole that we've dug ourselves in. Well, at least if you look on it at a national scale. See, people like to look at things on a national scale. I don't, because I see it to be kind of a waste of time, because I can't fix anything on a national scale. It would take a whole committee. It would take a whole Soviet to fix things on a national scale. You might be wondering, why do I keep saying the word Soviet? Well, because Soviet actually means committee. Or council, more accurately. The Soviet Union was the union of councils. So, but anyway, there's a whole nother long topic. A Soviet is a council. So I like to use that in place of the word council because it makes people upset, and I like that. It would take a whole Soviet to fix all the different problems that we have, and that can't happen, at least not nationally. Now, we could fix our economy here in Chattanooga, which really isn't that bad. Our local economy is very thriving despite different efforts to keep that from happening. So we're in a pretty good state. Be optimistic. Don't be afraid to be optimistic. Things are looking up. Things are looking pretty good in our area. Even if, say you're a hardcore Republican and Hillary Clinton gets elected, guess what? You can still run your local business because she doesn't have the power to outlaw local economy. And that's great. That's okay. Because we have all the power in our hands right now. Us, the citizens, we the people, you might say. Although I would say us, the people, because I know how grammar works. Us, the people. We've got the power, as the song goes. We've got the power in our hands right now. And the president, he doesn't. She doesn't if it's a woman who gets elected. If Carly Fiorina gets elected president, her tax plan can't be implemented unless everyone votes on it, which is unlikely because an overhaul of the tax system is, again, kind of unlikely. Like the whole repeal Obamacare thing. It's like, well, if I'm elected president, we'll repeal Obamacare. How? I'd love to know how that's going to happen, because if you have a, 53% Democrat Congress, you're not going to repeal Obamacare, no matter how much you promise for it when you're president. But anyway, that's a political thing. This isn't a political show so much. So we're going to talk about BlackBerry versus Android, which is a weird topic because it doesn't exist. BlackBerry is actually coming out with a new phone called the Priv. It's an Android phone that's going to be launching this year, and it has one particular cool feature, a keyboard that slides out. Yes, I'm not joking, a keyboard that slides out on an Android phone. Now, you may be wondering, why would I ever want to use that? Well, possibly if you're a little bit nostalgic, you may want to use a physical slide-out keyboard. Remember the Sidekick? Those phones? I think it was T-Mobile that was doing the Sidekick. Maybe it was Verizon or AT&T. I don't remember. It was some carrier-branded phone. It was a Sidekick. And I'm pretty sure Nokia made it, but whatever. It was a really popular phone, and it had a keyboard. And it was a dumb phone, obviously, because we're talking early 2000s, early to mid-2000s. It was very popular. And it had a physical keyboard. I had a phone for a long time that was sort of a BlackBerry clone that had a physical keyboard, and it was great. Now, would a physical keyboard be of any benefit at all on a smartphone, like, say, an Android phone? I'm not going to lie. I'm not really seeing it. I would have to use it to see the benefits. The problem is it's a standard-sized phone. I'm going to say maybe a 5-inch screen with a keyboard that slides out the bottom, making the phone even taller to maybe 8 inches or so. And I'm really not seeing that being very, very cool, very ergonomic, because it's a very top-heavy sort of design. We'll have to see, though. So BlackBerry did confirm that rumors of its Android device called the Priv, P-R-I-V, are accurate, according to Engadget. In the company's latest earnings report, CEO John Chen said that the smartphone combines the best of BlackBerry security and productivity with the expansive mobile application ecosystem available on the Android platform. It'll arrive by the end of 2015 in major markets in-store and online, and BlackBerry will reveal other details like specs and the price within the next few weeks. So we don't really know what the specs are going to be. Keep in mind, BlackBerry OS is not really supported anymore. I think you still get security updates, but still, we're not really seeing that. We're not really seeing that being implemented on new phones. We're not really seeing new BlackBerry phones coming out. So, sorry guys, at least not new phones running BlackBerry OS, I should say. It remains committed to the BlackBerry 10 OS, says BlackBerry, and will release 10.3.3 in March 2016. I don't know a whole lot of people who use Research in Motion's BlackBerry OS, but I know a lot of enterprise applications exist for BlackBerries. The president uses a BlackBerry, I do believe. Research in Motion, of course, is a Canadian company, and it tends to deal with enterprise customers much less so than consumers. So that just tends to be the fact of the matter. BlackBerry is obviously hoping that the new phone is a hit as sales continue to fall. Revenue for the quarter ending in August was a disappointing $490 million, which doesn't sound that bad to me, but stockholders tend to be a little bit more demanding than I am. So it's going to be running Android, though, this new BlackBerry phone. BlackBerry OS isn't quite dead yet. It's just got cancer, basically. It's not, that's a little bit dark, but you get my meaning. It's not really dead yet, but it's really not looking so great for BlackBerry OS, because you pretty much, there's only 2 mobile operating systems in the mind of the average consumer. You have to keep in mind, if you're a tech enthusiast, you can think of probably 20 different operating systems right now. If you're a layman, and again, there's nothing wrong with being a layman. I'm not bashing you at all, because tech is a hobby. If you're into it as much as I am, you really have to dedicate a lot of time to being into it as much as I am. And the average person doesn't have that time. I have the benefit of having a job where I have to be into it, and I also enjoy it. So that's just me. But you probably can think of, oh, well, if you're the average person, you think, well, there's Linux and there's OS 10 and there's Windows, and those are the 3 operating systems that you'll probably think of if somebody asks you how many operating systems are there. And that's not bad. That's pretty much all you need to know. But there are so many others. There's FreeDOS, and there's Gentoo, which of course is Linux, and there's POSIX, and there's RISC-OS, and there's Kali Linux, and of course there's Windows, and then there's Windows NT, the platform, and then there's the Windows Server 2016 is coming out pretty soon. There's all sorts of different operating systems that exist. I'm missing a bunch, I know. And the average consumer doesn't know that. Same goes for smartphones, or you say, what smartphone operating system options do you have? They say, well, I have Android and I have iOS. And that may as well be true, because in the mind of, if that's true in the mind of the consumer, it basically is true, to be quite frank with you. I wish it wasn't, but that's just how it is. We're probably not going to be seeing a resurgence of Symbian phones anytime soon. We're probably not going to be seeing Nokia making a massive comeback with a new custom operating system anytime soon, because the market seems to be pretty well affixed upon Android and iOS. I mean, I wish that wasn't true, but that's just how it is. I use Android because I like it. I'm a Linux geek to a very minor extent, so that's just how it is for me. I mean, I don't code or anything, so I'm not like deep into the Linux minutia, but I am involved in it. I'm not like a dev or anything, but I use Linux on a daily basis, and I like it a lot. So that's just my take on it anyway. So things are happening a lot in the world of tech. Things move very, very quickly in the world of tech also. By the way, somebody just posted on my Facebook wall that I have a nice vocabulary, so thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know. My mom was a English major, so that would be the explanation for that. My French vocabulary is terrible, though. A French person would not say that my vocabulary is très bien, so oh well. New hydrogel can keep stem cells alive for heart repair. Stem cells are great in theory, according to Extreme Tech. They're in the raw material from every cell type in our bodies. That's what our cells are made from, is stem cells. And we are now learning how to make them, how to direct the action once they are made. And they ought to be absolutely owning the headlines right now, but they are not. Extreme Tech is bemoaning that fact that stem cells are really not in the news as much as they should be. Now, I'm not talking about fetal stem cells, really gross, just abortion stuff. No, we're not getting into that. We're talking about stem cells harvested from you, the individual, the user. On the user end, stem cells are being harvested. And that's cool because you can actively consent or not consent to that. And they are, for the most part, to your benefit for them to be harvested. Pardon me, I'm taking off my my secondary shirt. I'm repping Georgia football, by the way. Not that I watch it that much. If you're watching on the live stream, by the way, you can do that, youtube.com, and search for Hot News Talk Radio. I misspelled the title. I'll fix that. I typed in Life A Mars instead of Life on Mars, but my misspelled title is the one that you'll have to go for if you're trying to find me on YouTube. I'm wearing a Georgia Bulldogs shirt that just has football emblazoned across it and the little Georgia G, which is the same as the Green Bay Packers G for some reason. Oh, well. Anyway, yeah, so stem cells really should be in the headlines more than they are, because we're seeing stem cell spray guns that are used to fix people's burns. Like, if we're talking people who have third-degree burns, there's this new sort of, not arrow spray, I guess. It's not really an aerosol, but it's this spray that's been invented. They spray on somebody's skin, and it regrows skin using stem cells very quickly. And it's such a cool technology, and we're not really seeing that in the headlines so much. Not sure why. Well, there's a new study that uses a hydrogel to protect and nourish stem cells bound for injection and differentiation into heart muscle cells. It used rats with damaged hearts and attempted to fix the damage by injecting their cell-laced hydrogel, which remuscularizes the area and fixes the characteristic damage of a heart attack. The hydrogel, I should say, worked like a charm. When injected into the hearts of rats, the hydrogel saw about 73% of the stem cells survive, compared to usually just a 12% survival rate when suspended in a normal injection fluid. So this hydrogel is a new way of preserving stem cells, and it makes the process much more efficient. Generally, what causes a heart attack, now I'm speaking very generally and without any medical license, so forgive me, but generally, when you have a heart attack, there's generally damage to muscle tissue, which causes the heart to keep beating. The reason it stops beating is because muscle tissue. So you have a massive heart attack. The stem cells go in and repair that, which is otherwise not really reparable, except for through exercise and lots of regimented exercises you can use to fix that, which again is not 100%. Stem cell injection, however, tends to be and is not particularly invasive, which is great too. So prior studies using stem cell injection have had to resort to specialized versions of cells or cell components, or just injecting incredible numbers of the cells. But both of these approaches are costly, time-consuming, and not particularly effective either. This is currently the strategy with gene therapy as well, to flood an area with many non-specific actors to wash out the importance of the individual incompetence. That's a great way to put it. But that's easier when you only need to make viral capsids. Stem cells are whole cells, and they're therefore unlikely that we'll ever get to a point where it's particularly quick or easy to grow them by the billions, because we're talking about whole cells having to be grown by the billions, and believe it or not, that kind of takes time. Still, though, this is a positive step forward in medical science, and that's always a great thing. Another area where we're seeing positive steps forward with medical science is in the virtual reality field, which you wouldn't really think of when you're thinking about medicine, but perhaps you should. Again, this is another thing where there's sort of a disconnect between, and I don't use this phrase disparagingly, by the way, the layman and the enthusiast. Because I'm an enthusiast in tech, simply because I am an enthusiast in tech. I was brought up in it. I had a nerdy dad. I was just very interested in technology from an early age. And I have to remind myself that not everyone is that way, because some people have lives and don't have time to be interested in the latest update to Android. So I have to keep that in mind. Not everyone is as interested in it as I am. So you might not really think about virtual reality as a technology that's really gone beyond science fiction, but it has. The Oculus Rift is a brand new, not brand new, maybe a few years old, technology that's been around for a little while now. And what it does is it's a pair of goggles, essentially, that you don't see through. Keep that in mind. It's goggles that have a black back to them. I'm waving my hands in front of my face to illustrate this. Black back to them, so you can't really see through them. And when you put these goggles on, again, I'm illustrating this with my hands for absolutely no reason. When you put these goggles on, you see two little screens, two little 1080p screens, and this is the virtual reality. So it fools your brain into thinking that you're seeing depth of field, essentially. And there's different little focus knobs you can use to adjust it, and yada yada, mechanical knobs. But anyway, it's a very neat technology because it can be used for medical science. How, you might be asking? Well, I will answer that question. Generally speaking, when we're talking about, say, medical science, as in learning about the structure of, we'll use the heart, for example. You're learning the structure of the heart. You're probably going to see a model, and you'll handle a pig heart, and you'll handle a human heart in some medical lab or a surgical theater, I should say. And that's all well and good. But you can't really zoom in on the arteries and see the structure of it in any sort of meaningful way unless you want to get your goggles really bloody. With virtual reality, however, you can view that computer model and you can see that in a virtual environment. But then you might be saying, well, I can do that on my computer screen. Aha, I say. But what about augmented reality, where you can't really do that on a computer screen? Now, augmented reality is the concept of, and it's applicable, the concept of displaying or projecting virtually an object into the real world over top of an everyday object. So you have sort of a seamless, transition, I suppose, from virtual into real. Think of, if you've ever played a video game, you have a heads-up display. And eventually, this heads-up display becomes essentially just instinctual, especially if you play first-person shooters like a lot of us, people my age, grew up doing. Doom clones for you older folk. You just get used to the heads-up displays. Oh, I have 58 health. I need to get a health pack soon. Oh, I only have 12 rounds left in this magazine. I need to reload. Yada yada. That sort of thing. It just becomes instinctual. Well, imagine putting that into the real world, and that is actually possible now. Microsoft HoloLens is one device that's working on putting that into the real world. Now, this has a great medical application, and they even showed that off when Microsoft was showing off this augmented reality HoloLens. What you can do now is, instead of being totally immersed in the virtual world, you're existing in both at the same time. I think this is the future of virtual reality, was not so much virtual, but more augmented. What happens is you put on these goggles, and again, you're in the surgical theater, and instead of just seeing the heart there, instead of a PowerPoint presentation where you have the screen and the projector and he's going through the slides, the virtual slides, of course, it's not real slides anymore, I hope. If they're still using actual film slides at your university, you should probably talk to the dean about an upgrade. But anyway, or they should charge more for tuition, but whatever. The new thing could be virtual reality, where everyone's wearing these goggles supplied to you by your university, and you're wearing them, and you're in the field, or you're in the surgical theater if you're in medical school, and you're seeing an autopsy being done, or what have you, and the topics which the professor or the doctor, professor, whatever, is speaking about are being displayed in augmented reality in your field of view. So he'll be describing the heart using his clicker, moving through the slides, and you can see 3D overlaid over this particular subject. We'll put it nicely, over this particular subject, this corpus, the things which are being described. Now, that is a huge leap forward in education. This could be applied to, of course, high schools, middle schools, preschools. Please don't send your kid to preschool, by the way. All these different fields where this can be applied. And that is such a wonderful leap forward in technology. Learning can essentially change forever due to this new augmented reality technology. And really, when we're talking about, while we're on the topic of education, why do we even have universities anymore when it comes right down to it, especially for a degree such as, say, business or what have you, a degree that doesn't really require you to do anything physical, right? Because if we're talking about forensic science, you do kind of need to be in the field, or a medical degree, you really do kind of need to be in the field. But if we're talking about a business degree where it's more book smarts than anything, why are we actually going to physical colleges? Why are we paying so much for tuition? For that matter, why are we paying anything at all for higher education? Why not just get a certificate saying that I have learned these things when the information is free? I mean, seriously, half the information that you would learn in college is freely available on the internet. College is acting more as a curator of information for you to consume at a rate which has been designated by your professor. That's really what college is these days. It's information being curated by a professor and then fed to you by said professor, and then you pay hundreds of dollars for books to learn these things. That's at least my view of college, because I'm very pessimistic. So why don't we do that for free? It certainly could be done for free. There's no reason not to these days. So the university system, as we're doing it today, is completely flawed. People have such a silly idea about degrees anyway. People think that you can get some arbitrary degree in something that's not really practical. Like, say, I have a film degree, which is cool. Are you going to make films? No, I want to get into business. Okay, get a business degree. Why didn't you get a business degree? You really should have gotten a business degree if you want to get into business. And then they end up working as a secretary somewhere. And that's really not the way to do it. You know, there are ways to do things, and that's really not it. You know, people get some liberal arts degree, which again is fine if you're getting into liberal arts, and then wonder why they can't get hired at like a law firm. And it's like, well, of course you're not going to be hired as an engineer because you don't have an engineering degree. You have a degree in women's studies. That's not going to help you out any. If you're getting into a think tank, that's cool, but you're not. So what are you doing? People, for some reason, have this odd idea that just because you have an associate's degree or a master's, you automatically should be getting jobs. It doesn't work that way. If you came into the office here at, say, Hot News Talk Radio, and you had a degree in women's studies, and then you wanted to do a show about technology, I'd be like, well, okay, but these credentials don't really match up here. I mean, I'm not really seeing this. So there are exceptions to the rule, but that seems to be kind of a broken system. Anyway, this is Digital Drive. Clutch for Keon Rose is up next here on Hot News Talk Radio.
This is the modern world.